Saturday in Denver, another overtime loss. Sean McDermott on the way out. No overtime wins since that Snow Bowl against Indianapolis pre-Josh Allen. And there are some famous ones. It wasn't like it was every game, but part of the story of this Bills era, to whatever extent it's complete after today's news, is how did they lose this game? And there's a little bit of that in the loss to Denver on Saturday. It wasn't like they had a big lead, but they definitely had looks at it. With us now on the West Her hotline is Eric Wood for the final time here in a while, putting a bow on the season. Eric, we didn't know, of course, that we'd have this McDermott news that came down this morning. How surprised are you?
I'm surprised. Anytime that, the season doesn't end with a Super Bowl, especially with the expectation you have for this team, this is a possibility. I just felt like I just honestly didn't see it coming. It startled me this morning when I got a notification on my phone pop up that Sean McDermott had been fired. And so, grateful for the opportunity to be able to play for him back in 2017, grateful for the effect that he had on this organization and the city and all the success we had under him. And, ultimately unable to get over the hump. And, we're going to hear that a lot. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on whoever comes in to be the next head coach to be able to deliver in the next few years and get to a Super Bowl at least.
I realize we're going to be doing, for now anyway, until we hear from the Bills, and even after that, some guessing about how this all went down. Eric, would you think that this was something that had to be on the mind of ownership heading into the playoffs? Maybe the failure to secure the 1 seed in a year where the Chiefs and the Ravens and everyone aren't there? Or do you think it's just a reaction to we lost again and something's got to change?
No, I would assume that it was on their mind. Now you go and win a Super Bowl, or maybe if you make it to the Super Bowl, maybe that changes everything. But I would assume it would have to be on your mind heading into the postseason or even heading into the season. If we can't get over the hump, if we can't get to a Super Bowl this year, then we got to make a switch. And, to me, I just don't think this was a, game ends. Okay, that determines it. And, for all intents and purposes, I thought Sean McDermott I thought he did a great job this year coaching and adapting to the type of personnel that they had on defense this year and adapting with all the injuries and different schemes. This is a Sean McDermott defense that generally kind of just does what they do. They play nickel defense. They rock and roll safeties to disguise coverages. They don't blitz a whole lot. Well, they completely flipped that philosophy for a lot of this year to be able to compete out there defensively, and I thought it was a great coaching job.
Yeah, that's one of the things that really stands out today, Eric. I mean, I can't pretend to know what goes through the mind of, say, McDermott's critics or even his harshest critics, but I felt like this was a year where maybe some of those people were reconsidering with the amount of credit. Even just last week, we talked about it today in our first hour together here, Eric, before you joined us now, about how the game last week, McDermott got a lot of credit for what they did against Jacksonville and disguising coverages, and that was something that happened pretty frequently this year. So to have it happen now, after that, seems, I think that's maybe the most surprising thing about it to me.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you. And, if this happened after the 13-second game, I think you would have maybe a lot more fan support than you do, but ultimately, when you make decisions like this, you have to understand that you're going to upset a lot of people. But if you feel like this is the right move at the right time to be able to get this organization to win a Super Bowl, then you have to do it, and you can't look back, and you own it. And that's the responsibility of those, obviously, in leadership over at One Bills Drive.
Eric, I have to ask you, because you'll know how to answer this. In here, during the course of the season, some things McDermott has said about questions about the roster have led Bulldog or myself or others to wonder and to ponder whether or not there is discord between McDermott and Beane. I think for most of their tenure together, that isn't even sort of in the air. They're almost like a team, or a package deal. But this year, maybe you could say it sounded different. when you say you're surprised, I think maybe one's surprise to this might reflect on what they know about whether there's some discord here. And I didn't know anything. I would say I was surprised too. But it sort of makes me wonder if there was a split. Can you speak to that at all?
I don't have any insider information on that. I saw the same and heard the same things that everybody else did. And, social media runs with it. And I was keen to, the comments made before the Jacksonville game where Sean praised, the move for Jacoby Myers and the impact that had at the trade deadline. And, whether that was a subtle jab or maybe not so subtle jab or not, we don't know that. And I don't know if we ever will. But, there's going to be rifts in any type of leadership, where you have two guys that are essentially answering to the owner. I don't know if you call them level playing field there. That's natural that it would happen. But from all indications that I have, those guys had a great working relationship. So I don't know is my final answer there. But I do know that for a long time, and I don't know right now, but for a long time, they had a great relationship.
Would you expect that Josh Allen was asked about this before they made a move on it, or is he not deserving of that sort of, status?
Josh Allen's the most valuable asset in your organization. Now, he's under contract. He's going to be here regardless. But I would assume he was made aware of it beforehand. I don't know that he had any maybe if he, pounds the table to keep him, maybe it makes them reconsider. But, to me, I would assume he was notified beforehand, but probably not involved in the decision. And then, moving forward and who you hire, you're obviously going to have Josh Allen in mind and having someone that can come in and maximize his strengths and maximize his potential for the rest of his career. But and maybe I'm kind of stuck on the Steve Biscotti press conference from a week ago where he was talking about John Harbaugh getting fired. It's like, let's let the experts handle the coaching hiring and all of that. And we'll have the quarterback in mind, but he's here to play quarterback, not be a front office leader.
So there are so many questions right now. I mean, with how the season ended, the game, this big news today, and then the roster, and part of the, I would say, consternation from the fan base is like, well, what about the roster? Like, was this even a bad coaching job at all, given the drumbeat of what the Bills do not have in terms of weapons? Eric, like, where do you start with this team? There's not tons of cap room. Bean is staying on, so we don't have to wonder about someone new in the role. Like, you can't just – the thing about wide receiver is, I know it's over a long period of time, and the Bills seem to have felt like, and Bean has said it himself famously, that we think we're good there. But you can't just go take 3 elite wide receivers off other teams. Like, there's still a lot that has to work your way to be able to address that. I mean, there's age on defense. There has been this. There's more of it. Where would you want to attack here with the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard Brandon Beane say in the past, whatever gets you eliminated in the playoffs is, you know that your final game is likely going to show you what you need to address. This is another playoff exit where we have 0 sacks against the Broncos. And, to me, I understand that Oliver was hurt for a majority of the season. You lose Michael Hoyt. Those were going to be 2 big pieces. Joey Bosa deals with a wrist for a lot of the season, but finding ways to get after the quarterback, and maybe that's a new defensive coordinator that brings some different schemes and blitz packages that you don't necessarily have to go and invest a ton of money into the defensive line, but finding a way to more consistently get to the quarterback, especially come playoff time, because to me, that's been our crux in the playoffs, is not being able to heat up these quarterbacks, especially late in games. And then offensively, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, just being real, finding better receiving options for Josh Allen out there, whether that's development of a Keon Coleman, whether that is, going out and drafting, whether it's free agency, a trade. But to your point, yeah, we're not just going out and saying, all right, give us Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Here we go. All right, we're good. It's not that easy. Now, we saw the Bills bring in Diggs through trade, and that might be something we look to do this offseason, where we go try to find a number one receiver, because, you know, you look at some of the times that this season that the offense struggled, it was when teams were able to take away the running game. Kincaid generally was not available these games, so you lose another one of your receiving threats, and then just not a consistent go-to receiver that's going to make the big plays. And this isn't a knock on Brandon Cooks, because I thought for what he was brought in to do, he certainly made a major impact down the stretch for the Bills. But I don't know that he should be we shouldn't have been in a position per se to have to rely on him in those moments to make that catch or,
yep,
you know, get open in big moments.
Yeah, it's pretty stark to me that the last two passes of this game on Saturday were to Mecole Hardman and Brandon Cooks. I mean,
exactly.
That's tough. I mean, you have to address that in some meaningful way. And I wonder, like, there's so many questions, and we haven't learned yet when the Bills, I mean, I assume at some point they're going to talk and explain all this. I doubt it waits until they hire a new coach, but I guess it could, because that could take some time, especially if they're after coordinators that are still alive in the playoffs. I wonder how much the way the coaching staff and McDermott specifically handled and disciplined Keon Coleman this year was a problem. You know, that's a pick that Bean was counting on developing, and, you know, I wonder if they disagreed about him being disciplined and not being given a chance to play in some of those games and maybe establish something so that they would have a more dependable player that had been rostered prior to, I don't know, Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock into that. I mean, It certainly could be the case. My thoughts on that would be, if you're consistently late for NFL meetings, you're going to get benched, you're going to get disciplined, and I would assume that Bean was more disappointed in the player, or maybe even a position coach for not developing him or pouring into him, whatever that may be. But I think Bean and McDermott were likely lockstep in, like, look, I guess we take away his playing time, because if we can't rely on him, you know, to make a meeting, how do we rely on him on the field? But I've said this before. It's hard to come late to meetings in the NFL. It's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
Because although the meetings, let's say they start at 8, generally most guys are getting the facility sometime between 5:30 and 6:30, depending on how much rehab you have, or if you're going to work out, or you're going to get extra film in. You're going to eat breakfast before the meeting. I know Sean has lightened up over the years, but I know he's not letting you bring breakfast to that first meeting. And breakfast is mandatory during the season. And so, like, it's pretty difficult, because you essentially have overslept through, like, 4 other things before that first meeting.
Plus, anybody who's ever been in that cafeteria would never miss an opportunity to go back. Out at the it's so nice.
Yeah, it's not those little boxes of Fruit Loops. There's good stuff there.
It's not the continental breakfast at your $89 a night hotel. A little better.
When the Pagulas took over, they sat down, me, Fred Jackson, and Kyle Williams, and asked us what kind of upgrades or what we needed and what would help us out. And we said, we've got to do something about the cafeteria. And they went over and above, to where I would argue we probably have the best nutrition program in the league.
Very good. Eric Wood with us here on WGR. Sean McDermott fired this morning. The Bills lose in Denver in the divisional round on Saturday night. Eric, at the close of your broadcast, before we started with postgame, you said words to the effect of, you know, this call, this play, that play. When you live on the edge, this is what happens. When you fly too close to the sun, this is what happens. And this was what wasn't surprising to me at all, was that they lost one of these games, because you're talking about having to get there on the road against good defenses. And this is how the Bills have played most of the season, even early, week 1, quintessentially. But even in the games after that, where they were double-digit favorites, they had to work for it. And that's almost every game, except the Jet games. That's every game on their schedule almost. So I have only so much sympathy for a call that you didn't agree with that was still close, or something else. I mean, a bounce, you said it. And I will echo your sentiments the entire offseason, because I just think this team made it too hard They weren't dominant enough. Say what you want, still very good season, but they weren't dominant enough to be able to overcome these kinds of circumstances.
Yeah, exactly. And look, that's now 12 games that Denver's won this year by one score or less. That requires some luck. It truly does. It requires some good bounces, some good calls. And if you want to avoid having to rely on maybe getting a call, because there's so many 50-50 calls throughout a football game, and they're going to happen towards the end of the game as well. If you want to avoid potentially being on the wrong end of it, like we were on a few of them, you got to play cleaner football. You got to play with a 2-score lead at the end. You got to be in a better position late in those games, and we just weren't. And that's what happens when you turn the ball over 5 times and you only force one turnover. Analytically, it would say you have about a 1% chance of winning. Now, we got Josh Allen. This team has a ton of heart and resilience, and they fought back like that. You're just relying on those 50-50 calls to go your way, it's not a good recipe.
Yeah. Eric, recognizing that we're, only a few hours into a world where the Bills are searching for a new head coach, what are your initial thoughts as they begin this search? We've got, some names of passing game coordinator in L.A., the offensive coordinator in Seattle, the up-and-comer list that maybe a lot of fans generally don't have a ton of familiarity with. Then you've got, kind of the legends bracket. Mike Tomlin is out there. Of course, John Harbaugh has taken a job. Stefanski's not a legend, but whatever. He took a job. Mike McCarthy is around. He's won a Super Bowl. You got to go back a long way for both he and Tomlin's Super Bowl, but there is a established Super Bowl winning column over there. Where do you think the Bills go shopping in all of that and decide what idea they like best, or do you think they have a specific plan in mind?
I would assume making this move, you have somebody in mind, or maybe a few guys that you want to hire or interview, and then, make your decision from there. Nobody's going to call up from the Bills front office and ask my opinion, but my opinion on this would be, my preference would be to go out and get an offensive-minded head coach. And the reason I say that is because let's say we have 8 to 10 years left of Josh Allen in Buffalo. Who knows if it's longer or shorter? We don't know. Only God knows that. But if we got 8 to 10 years left and you hire a defensive-minded head coach and it works out, the offensive coordinator in 2 years is either going to get fired because he wasn't very good, or he's likely going to be a head coach because if he's good enough, Josh is going to make him look great. And then Josh now plays in 4 to 5 different offenses for the remainder of his career. And I've heard Tom Brady talk about this so often, about how valuable it was for him to play in one system his whole career. And then he mastered that system, and he knew every in and out of it. And, he knew at the snap of as soon as the play snapped, if something goofy happened with the coverage, unexpected, okay, I've got to throw this ball into the dirt, not take a sack because we're screwed, because I've had this happen so many times. So to me, you're likely going out and looking for a great offensive mind that hopefully for the remainder of Josh's career, they work together, they master that offense, and you got one side of the ball handled.
Seems right. Who wins the Super Bowl, Eric?
Man, Seattle looks tough. Seattle looks really tough. I'll go with Seattle. How about you guys?
I think the Rams are kind of a coin flip for them. What a game last night, really.
I know.
The Komet touchdown.
Yeah, you can feel the Bears a little bit. The Bills, we often will say, you make these incredible plays. There was another hook and ladder in the Bills game Saturday, by the way. 3rd time this year they've successfully gotten out of jail with that play, and they didn't win any of the games.
Wow.
That's the kind of play that you look at and go we got to win this game. That play to Komet at the end is the kind of play you win a game on. I know it only tied the score. They could have gone for 2 and won it, I guess, and chose not to. But wow, that's got to hurt.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. That Caleb Williams play was awesome. But, honestly, just anybody but New England.
Yep.
Which they're likely going to – I thought the point spread would be bigger when it got released. going against Denver with Bo Nix out, but it's like 5.5 or something. But I assumed it'd be at least a full touchdown with Jarrett Stidham starting at quarterback for the Broncos.
Were you even out of the booth yet by the time that Knicks news came down?
I was going to, where was I? I was exiting the stadium, and everybody was talking about it.
Yeah, we just found out during postgame, like, great.
Yeah.
Well,
I wonder how much, if at all, we already covered this earlier, that it probably was something, at least in your opinion, that you might have been thinking about for a little while. I know me sitting on my couch yesterday watching New England play at home with the chance to then go play Denver without Bo Nix. Like, if the spots were flipped and the Bills had won the division and the 2 seed, and that's us playing at home, on the divisional round, and a chance to go do that, maybe the failure is not having a better season. I mean, they still won their 12 games, but I wonder if that, because I think a lot of Bills fans felt that way watching New England yesterday, like that was supposed to be us, not them this year.
It always is.
Yep.
It always is, right?
No doubt. And you tip the cap to the Patriots for making the plays at the game in Orchard Park. I mean, Drake Bay, Diggs, they made some awesome plays to win that game. The Bills, of course, had, I believe, 3 turnovers in that game as well, but they made some plays down the stretch. You look at that Dolphins game down in Miami, that's the one where you're like, oh, that hurts. And that one cost you the division.
Eric, thanks for your time today and all season. Go get a break, I guess. Hopefully you will. I think you will. Sure, I can pretty much count on you for that. I think you're not grinding tape tonight.
No, I'm not going to be grinding tape. I had a bunch of media appearances today. I got some lined up for tomorrow, but I will not be grinding on the tape here tonight. I'm going to celebrate the rest of the kids being out of school with them.
Go touch some grass. Very good. Thanks for everything, Eric.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Always enjoy being on with you guys.
Another great season.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. That's Eric Wood. His appearances here on WGR on these Football Mondays brought to you by Northwest Bank. For what's next, get started at northwest.com. And by Northtown Kia, Western New York's #1 Kia dealer. Shop at northtownkia.com.
So what do you want to do about the roster in the offseason? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a question right now, isn't it? We're there. Details from the game Saturday. Oh, yeah, you could ask those questions. What happened in that game? McDermott news, much above everything else today. 803-0550 is the number for your calls. We'll have Sal at 5. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. It is Football Monday on